Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and InScale, and welcome back. So after the end of the episode 14, I got to thinking and I wanted to do a little extra segment for everyone just to go through and show everybody all the industries that we'll be modeling on the Sayrehurst Secondary and show you the mock-up of the buildings before we get into track planning. I anticipate that episode 15 is going to be a rather large episode, and I'm already looking at breaking it into part 1 and 2, so I know that this segment wouldn't fit in. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to call this episode 14 and a half, and I'm going to take you through a sort of a walking tour of all the facilities that we'll be using. So we're going to start on the Tomsville Industrial Track. This segment of railroad is the southeasternmost portion of the layout. The largest customer on the Tomsville Industrial was the Ciba-Geigy facility. The Ciba-Geigy facility was a 1,300-acre complex which manufactured resins and dyes. So in 1989, the facility shut down and was later demolished so that it could be turned into a Superfund site to clean up all the pollution. So very little remains of the facility, and also it's very hard to do any kind of research. I was able to find 2 photographs. They were both taken from the Superfund website through the federal government, and I used these 2 images to help put the facility back together. Another source that I used throughout my planning stages was the Historical Aerials website. You can go on Historical Aerials, and they have aerial photography all the way back to roughly the 30s and 40s. So using these 2 references, I was able to construct a rough model of what I wanted to feature in the complex. Now, it's 1,300 acres, and I counted somewhere in the vicinity of 20 structures, not counting tanks and loading facilities and all that stuff. So it's a huge complex that would never fit on a home layout. So what I've done is I've used these key photographs to pick out key structures that would represent the Ciba-Geigy facility to someone who saw it for the first time on the layout. Okay, so this is the representation that we've come up with for Ciba-Geigy. Now the facility had 2 long tracks that went through the whole facility, and there was multiple crossovers where they would spot certain cars at different locations. Then there was also a 3rd track in this general vicinity where cars were spotted against this building. Now, a long time ago, there was a website. It was called the Blue Comet, and I came across a photograph that showed cars being spotted at the Ciba-Geigy facility. That website has since disappeared, and I can't find any trace of the photograph. But from what I remember of that photograph, these buildings were like a white steel structure. Also, I remember that they were very tall compared to the cars. So, looking at the historical aerial photographs, what I've determined is this large building here looked to be a receiving building. So the way we're going to represent is this building is going to be sort of like a receiving area where products come in, and then this looked to be like a production facility. And there was a series of pipes that went in all different directions that were over top of the tracks. Of course, that's not being represented here. These little structures here were tanks. There was a series of tanks in between these 2 buildings here. So that's how we laid it out. Also, in that one grainy picture, you can remember that there was a large water tower, so there would be the water tower in the back. I've built these buildings using those 2 photographs, historical aerials, aerial photography, and using their ruler measurement tool to get an overall footprint from looking down on top. So then, using some basic photogrammetry and some just general building knowledge, the one photograph you can see this building here with that smokestack next to the 3 tanks, it's a 2-story building. So I just represented that a commercial building 15 feet per story, so this is a 30-foot tall building. I estimate through my photogrammetry this main building here is somewhere in the vicinity of 80 feet tall to the top of this roof here. So as you can see, they're rather large buildings. This building was somewhere in the vicinity of 380 feet long. It's going to be way too long. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is cutting back probably like 100 feet off of this building, and then it will fit comfortably in on the Tomsville Industrial. The other thing is, if you look on the back side of this building, there was this second 2-story portion. That's going to have to be cut off, and this is going to have to go right up against the backdrop because pushes this building too far out where it's going to interfere with the tracks in the front. So also on the Toms River Industrial, there was two other customers. There was a roofing supply customer that was just across Route 537 from the Ciba-Geigy facility. And further down in the late 90s, there was a propane loading facility. I don't know which of the two I'm going to pick, whether I'm going to pick the lumber facility or the propane unloading. And both of those structures, I'm not going to scratch build. I'm just going to use any kind of commercial kit that looks very similar. Okay, so that's going to be the structures and industries that we're going to feature on the Toms River Industrial. So let's move up the line to Lakehurst. Okay, so this is the area that we're going to model for Lakehurst. This is State Highway Route 70 overpass. This is the signal bridge. This would be the main line here, and this will be the passing siding. So let's look at Lakehurst historically. The Central of New Jersey's main line came through Lakehurst here. This was a junction that joined the Central of New Jersey's branch line to Toms River. This would eventually became the Toms River Industrial. This third track here was used for the local to tie their locomotives down, and this was a crew change location. There was at this spot here. Over here is a signal bridge. The Southern Division main line was actually signalized all the way to Bridgeton. So what would happen is the trains going to Bridgeton would stop in Lakehurst, and they would drop cars on the passing siding. And there was a third track that was over here on this side of the creek. There's a creek with a wooden bent bridge here. This track here was where the local crew would spot cars that would be going down the Toms River. So then the local crew working out of here would pick up their cars and then go down to Toms River. So this practice continued into the early 80s. And I have a picture from 1979 that shows that the crew change location here with the Conrail locomotive spotted on the third track. So since the Sayrehurst Secondary is continuing to run this traffic scheme, I'm going to be modeling this spot now as it was into the 80s. This track did exist into the early 90s. As for the town of Lakehurst itself, right around this point is Union Ave, right here at the edge of the camera. Union Ave will cross over here. As for structures to represent in Lakehurst, I'm not going to be scratch building any. Over in this general vicinity here was the post office, so I'm just going to find something that's commercially available to put in there. The wooden bent bridge that goes over the creek, I am going to scratch build that because that's going to be fun. It consisted of 3 bents and then a series of massive beams that went across for each rail. The signal bridge, I'm going to use some kind of commercially available product that will be suitable for the location. As for the Route 70 overpass, I'm just going to use something that's commercially available to represent the bridge. The bridge looks like it was built back in the 40s or 50s, so it has the concrete dividers on the side with the arches that you can see through. So I believe Rick's has a suitable bridge that will represent this. So that's going to cover Lakehurst. So let's move up the line now to Lakewood, and I'll show you what we've done there. Okay, so here's Lakewood. This is Route 88, State Highway Route 88. This is the main line here, and this is the runaround at Lakewood. This is DiNasso's Building Supplies. Now, what I did was I used historical aerials to look at the footprint of these buildings because it has changed over time. So I went to historical aerials and looked at the 1988 overview, and this is how I came up with this shape here. I then used some photogrammetry of the photographs that I took at the Lakewood area and estimated the height of this building to be approximately 20 feet because it has a large roll-up door on this end here that looks like a truck could back into. So to have some structure above, I added in 5 feet above that door. This yellow building here is an interesting building. I don't know the history of it. However, I do know that it functioned as a Napa Auto Parts and some other businesses before that. I definitely want to include it because it's very close proximity to DiNasso's and the railroad tracks in Route 88. And also I really like the structure with the gabled roof. It's going to be a very interesting build when I have to scratch build it. This large structure in the back was a open storage facility where the lumber was stacked inside. The height of this here isn't correct. It's a little too low, so I have to reconstruct it. But I'm just using it for the footprint for our planning purposes. This building's already too long. I think I estimated at 280 feet. It's going to be too big for the facility, so I'm going to have to probably cut it back to here. This building's also going to be used as a view block because this is where the Southern Secondary is going to go out behind on my layout on its way to Weapon Station Earl. So I wanted to show these photographs. These photographs I got from off the internet, and I obtained permission from their photographers to show them to everybody. So thank you, Anthony Passy and Stephen Bradley, for allowing us to use these photographs. So the reason I wanted to show you these photographs is because if you look in the background behind the Conrail locomotives, you'll see a antenna that's sticking up, and you'll also see a yellow building. So this yellow building is at the end of the passing siding here at Lakewood. So I definitely wanted to feature that. The radio tower that I thought was right next to the yellow building, when I looked on Google Earth, is actually 1.5 miles away. I know there's suitable models that I can use, but I want to put this back along the backdrop behind the trees, just so it kind of pokes over the trees, just like in the picture. So I thought that would be a good addition. Okay, so outside of Lakewood, in this direction towards Englishtown, I wanted to represent Farmingdale. Farmingdale was going to be a junction location on the Sayrehurst Secondary. In real life, it was an area where the Freehold Secondary joined the Southern Secondary. And if you go back in history, back to the Penn Central days, that was where the Penn Central crossed at grade the Central of New Jersey's main line. And the Penn Central continued down into Manasquan and connected with the North Jersey coastline at Seagirt. So I originally thought this would be a great area to model. However, with the way that the track plan's working out, it looks like the only thing I'm going to be able to represent in Farmingdale is a curved turnout. I'm not going to be able to fit anything else into the track plan. So that's unfortunate, but however, I still have the curved turnout to represent the Southern Secondary. So in this model, the Sayrehurst Secondary, I'm still going to represent the Southern Secondary, but it's going to the north towards Weapon Station Earl. So this way I can have more of a traffic pattern to bring more cars on and off the layout. So now let's move past Farmingdale and we're going to head into Freehold, and I'll show you what I've done there in Freehold. So before I get into going through the individual buildings, let me just tell everyone that I changed my construction techniques on putting these buildings together. When I started doing these gabled roofs, the pitched roofs, the curved roofs, the tape just wasn't working. So I kind of found it by accident. I started using low temperature hot glue, and it is so much better when you use the hot glue. It's very strong. I mean, I'm almost tempted to just cover these buildings and just use them as they are when I go to scratch build them. I don't know yet. I'm still looking into that. So a good alternative to that, using that painter's tape, is this hot glue. I mean, it's very, very stiff and strong. It's a good okay, technique. So this is Freehold. This is how Freehold is shaping up. This is the State Highway 9 overpass. There is a distance of about 1/2 mile between the overpass and the lumberyard, but it's been compressed on the layout for obvious reasons. This here is County Route 522. It parallels the railroad tracks in various locations between Englishtown and Freehold. So what you have here in front of you is a representation of the Freehold Lumber Company. Now this lumberyard was in existence as you see it here until a large fire in 1997. The fire destroyed these buildings here, and this building was heavily damaged and had to be rebuilt. These were totally destroyed, but the loading platform still remained. So sometime in the late 90s, the facility was bought and taken over by Builders General, and they rebuilt it to the current configuration that you see if you look on Google Earth, or if you look at the photographs that I posted on the Facebook page. So looking at the historical aerial photographs, there was 3 structures. There was the large structure that was flat like this. It had a large door for truck loading. So that was that one there. It was very, very square. It probably was a corrugated steel building. The second building was this building here. It actually had a large peak on it, and still had a large door that a truck could back into. So that's what this building here is. And then this building, which is very interesting, and I'm actually doing the mock-up. It looks so good that I can't wait to scratch build this, is this building here. It looked like it was a corrugated steel side building with a truss roof on it. So it had a nice arc here. So I think this is going to be a very good addition to the lumber facility. And the last thing here, what is the loading platform. This is my representation of that. This is very long. I think we're going to end up cutting back on this. And what they would do is the box cars would back under this so that they could unload the wood when it was raining and not get stuff wet. So this is actually going to be a nice little addition to that. And then this was the Freehold runaround here, and then this would be the main line. Then off of the main line here between 522 and the main line was a team track. The team track was used for unloading bricks. There was a local vendor that picked up bricks off the team track. Also, there was the occasional loads of telephone poles for JCP&L, and also the occasional transformer load for one of the switching facilities down on 522. So that's what's going to be represented here. Then this will be the backdrop of the layout, and I'm going to use building flats because there was some businesses that were right along 522, and we'll put that in there. So unfortunately or fortunately that I built this building and I've started to put the track plan together, it looks like I'm running out of room, so I think I'm going to omit this building. So the facility is going to look more like this. It's going to be shorter. Also, down the main line on where the backdrop curves over here, I'm trying to fit in the pressed stone antifreeze facility. I think the only thing I'm going to be able to fit in is a siding and 2 tanks, or 2 or 3 tanks. That's going to be down on this corner of the layout here. If you look at the Route 9 overpass as it is today, it is a new structure. The existing bridge that was back in '88 was the original bridge from when they built the highway in the 40s or 30s. So that bridge, again, I think I'll be able to use a suitable commercial product to represent the bridge. These buildings will be scratch built, and then the flats against the wall I'm going to find some commercially available, or I may just take actual pictures of the facilities themselves and put them on foam core board and mount them to the backdrop. I don't know, I still haven't done the research because we're still in the planning phase. So that's how Freehold is shaping up. All right, everyone, so there you have it. There's a quick tour from Toms River all the way up to Freehold. So you know these are the buildings that I've built, and this is how it's shaping up as we go. I just really wanted to show all this stuff to you, everyone, before I got into episode 15. So as we're concentrating on laying track, that it doesn't fall by the wayside, so everybody can see how I did these buildings. Now, just wanted to remind everybody that these buildings are not exact replicas. They're not going to be the exact measurements. I didn't go out and take measurements of buildings because it's just too complicated in this day and age to get permission to go into facilities, to take measurements. Also, some of the buildings are gone. They don't exist. The Ciba-Geigy's gone. I cannot find any reference material online about the facility. I think when they destroyed it to clean it up, I think the company destroyed all evidence of the facility too. Also, certain structures have changed over the years, like Dinasso's. They added on to that large warehouse that was in the center. So by using Google Earth and photogrammetry and also photographs that are posted on the internet, I've been able to put these models together. So I think all these buildings have a good visual representation so that when the observers come into the layout room and they look at those buildings, oh, I know what that building is. That's the building by Dinasso's on Route 88 in Lakewood. So that's what I'm kind of looking for, not so much that I'm looking for the exact measurements and replication. And also the facilities themselves are not the actual size because we've had to compress them to fit it into the track plan. So these are all good points for you to take in consideration if you're doing any kind of prototype modeling and you want to do prototype facilities and buildings. You know, there's only so much room you have to work with. The 380-foot long building at Ciba-Geigy, I mean, it'd be great to have the full representation of the building, but it just doesn't work. Yeah, we're going to have to compress stuff. We're going to have to lose this half mile in between the Route 9 overpass and the lumber facility. And that's just things that you have to take into consideration when you're designing your layout. But by sitting down and building all these foam core structures and seeing them visually, it helps me decide what buildings to go. That square building here in the lumberyard, I didn't feel that it was visually necessary to have it. So that's why I went with these two, because I thought they were more appealing. So again, having these 3D models helps you when you progress through your track plan and planning stages. So I hope everybody's enjoyed this little bonus episode. I just wanted to point this out so everybody knows where I'm going. When we're laying down track in episode 15, you're already familiar with the facilities. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you at episode 15.